welcome to Retech, and today we're going to talk about the MSX machines. The MSX machines, which really weren't that well known in a vast chunk of the world. In the USA they really didn't get a foothold, and in the UK not so much either, although they were kind of more freely available than they were in America, and people did take them up, but they didn't sell in vast numbers. Now, the MSX machine was a brilliant idea. It was a great idea by having a standard, and it's very similar to what happened in the IBM PC world, where there was a lot of various manufacturers producing various machines and also at various price points, and they all were a standard machine. They could all run each other's software, so software for one machine could be easily run on another machine, and that was a fantastic idea. And this kind of all spun from Japan, and it was a joint collaboration with Microsoft. Believe it or not, Microsoft did actually get hold of and get involved of the burgeoning home computer market at the time, but it never really took off in the way I believe they thought it would. So we're going to cover the machines, and the one we're going to look at today is the CF2700 from Panasonic. Now, the one you normally see in the UK is the Toshiba HX10. This is the one that seemed to have sold the most units, was kind of seemed to be sold in most computer outlets at the time, and it really did get a good foothold as far as MSX products were concerned. But as I said, they weren't a massive seller in the UK. They did well enough to have a lot of software produced for them, and they did well enough to have a lot of ports taken across from other platforms. But as we know, the Commodore 64 and the Sinclair Spectrum had a huge foothold in the UK, along with the BBC Micros. So there wasn't a lot of manoeuvring room that these machines could actually use to get a foothold in the UK, and it was the same for a lot of other countries, but they were very popular in parts of Europe and of course Japan. Now, the biggest reason they didn't get a foothold was this. The Sinclair ZX Spectrum. And the Sinclair ZX Spectrum was a huge hit in the UK at the time, which is why they didn't massively develop a huge foothold in the UK. And Sir Clive Sinclair, or Clive Sinclair as he was known at the time, had a few disparaging words to say about the MSX machines.
Offering computers next door to their accepted electrical goods.
Fine, yes, it's like, but what happens is this: it's just as if all the car manufacturers have got together and said, let's all have the same engine, the same gearbox, the same axle, and let's use the one that was designed 5 years ago.
He basically said that the MSX was a slower machine, it was based on 5-year-old technology, and why would anybody buy one? Now, that wasn't completely true. The MSX used a Z80 processor. The MSX used the AY Saturn chip, which was later found in the plus 128 range of Sinclair ZX Spectrums. The ZX Spectrum had a rubber keyboard, where almost every MSX machine had a proper keyboard. The MSX had a lot more expandability and a lot more ports on the back, whereas the ZX Spectrum basically had a card edge, an edge connector as its main expansion port. Now, this is not to be disparaging of the Sinclair Spectrum, because it was a very popular and really, for what it was, a very good machine. But trying to say that this was a better machine than this or this was probably a bit of a stretch. Now, the ZX Spectrum was based on very similar architecture using a same processor. The ZX Spectrum had 48K, where these had mainly 64K in the MSX machines, and I do believe that the build quality of these machines really couldn't be rivaled by the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and that's mainly because the Spectrum was built to a price originally, where these were not. These were left up to the manufacturers to kind of add in their own technical abilities but keep them compatible. So these were a lot more expensive than the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and that's the entire MSX range of computers. They were almost twice to 3 times more expensive than a Sinclair product. So let's take a look at what Clive Sinclair said about these machines at the time.
So they've got together to try and form a common standard. They've had that common standard in Japan now for a year or so, hence all these computers. But what should be realized is that all those companies together, all of them, throughout Japan, make fewer computers than Sinclair Research on its own.
At the moment.
Now, why would Kazuhiko Nishi, who initially envisaged the MSX range of computers, why would he bother? I mean, really, it wasn't like it was the kind of early years of the 8-bit range when he thought up this idea, and it wasn't the fact that there wasn't a foothold in just about every other country of their own 8-bit micros, whether they've been Commodore in the US, Sinclair in the UK, and for a good chunk of Europe as well. And there were a lot of other machines out there, such as the Dragon and the Atari, and all of these machines had a huge foothold, especially in the kind of case of Atari, who'd been producing their 8-bit line since the late 1970s, and it seems a little bit kind of late. You're talking 1983 when this idea was thought up, and these machines were based on the Spectra Video. Now, the Spectra Video set the actual groundwork for the MSX range of computers, and this Spectra Video, or these two Spectra Videos, which you can see now, were actually two machines that I really kind of wanted when I was a child, and they were fantastic looking machines. They were well spec'd up, and basically they were the MSX machines, but they weren't completely MSX compatible, because obviously these were based on those machines and the standard had been set. But there was a bit of a buzz around these machines when they were first launched, and there was, really quite a big buzz in the UK as well, if you judge it by this NEC report from the electronics show that they had there.
Here's one by Canon. There's a JVC. This is a Mitsubishi. This is a Sanyo. There's a Sony. Over there is a Toshiba. And this one is from Hitachi.
But you also got these disparaging remarks by Sir Clive Sinclair. Now, why was that? Well, I believe that people were kind of getting a bit scared, because the Japanese did very well in the calculator wars. They did very well in a lot of the consumer electronics wars at the time, and they were really going to do, or they should have done very well in the microcomputing era at the time, especially with the backing of Microsoft. And I believe that's what a lot of people were getting a little bit frightened of, especially these people who were producing things like the Spectrum, the Commodores, the Ataris, the Dragons and so on, because this was a machine that could be built by anyone to a set standard by anyone. You know, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And it kind of makes sense why you would be slightly frightened of the invasion of the MSX machines at the time, in the era of the 8-bit machines. Back to these two machines, you can see the HX10 here, which is kind of a nice unit. It's very, very heavy. It's very well built. It's got a very nice feel to it. The case is very, very nice to kind of touch and feel. It's tactile. It's got a single cartridge slot in here. If I have a quick look at it, we have an expansion bus, video out, composite, audio, RF, and a cassette recorder port. And that's the main kind of expansion ports on this machine. And everything sounds, feels, and is very, very well put together. Now, it's an MSX standard machine. It does have a few little quirks, which I think I've covered off in one of my other videos on this machine on its own. But in general, it's a very, very good quality item. But you will see this machine in the front. It's a CF2700. It's made by Panasonic. It's of a very, very different style to the Toshiba computer, and the Toshiba is a very well-known manufacturer. Now, the CF2700 is altogether a lot heavier. I mean, the weight difference is quite substantial, and I'm not sure where the reasoning behind the entire weight of this machine comes from, but they have two cartridge ports instead of a single one on the Toshiba. They have these massively oversized cursor keys. Now, these keys seem to dominate the range of MSX computers. It's kind of one of their striking features, so to speak, because on the likes of the Commodore, you had a very tiny little thumb pad instead of these massive cursor keys. The keyboards on the MSX range was another good feature. They were generally quite nice typewriter style full travel or near full travel keyboards. Now, on the Panasonic, got a really, really nice feel to it, really nice key switches, and it's a quality keyboard. On the Toshiba, it's a little bit more of a membrane-ish kind of feel to it underneath. It has half the travel on the keys, but again, it's not quite so nice as this one, but it's not a bad keyboard. And to be honest, it's more of a modern feel to it because it has a less of a kind of pronounced step between the keys, where this has quite a high step between the keys, which is kind of indicative of what people thought was a quality layout at the time. So feel wise, the Toshiba kind of feels a little bit more 21st century in the layout and the less pronounced step in the keys. The Panasonic is definitely a better quality keyboard, but it feels more of a 20th century model, okay? But the build quality is unashamedly very good on this machine. Now, these are very rare in the UK. They are MSX standard. They are very, very nicely put together. They will do exactly what this does on screen with the software. There will be no difference, okay? None whatsoever in the way they function and look. Now, the Panasonic has a few different connectors. Okay, you have composite out, you have RF out, you have a cassette port, but you also have a expansion port which would be used for printers on the back. So really the standards on here were composite, RF and cassette. You know, the leads would be interchangeable and so on. Now this one has no other features. It has an on-off switch on the side, same side as the Toshiba, and on the left hand side this has a joystick port just there, and it's quite a weighty machine just flipping it around here, where the Toshiba on the left hand side has the same joystick ports, but the actual expansion or printer port is on the left hand side instead of being on the rear. So you get the idea that even the ports and the expandability of these machines were controlled by what was basically an MSX white paper. Now these are very, very good machines. I've only just got hold of this one because it is quite a rare machine in the UK, and I'm going to put it through its paces and see really what the differences are, and we're going to show some software on this machine. But the MSX Story, it could have been a fantastic story. It could have been the next big thing. It should have been the next big thing, because having a standard from the 8-bit era onwards would have meant that we would have now have machines that were built on the MSX standard, but they be running at 64-bit. They would have evolved, they would be a lot more powerful, but initially and hopefully they would have been backward compatible, which also meant that everybody would be running very similar software on what were home based computers. So you can see how these would have evolved into a standard that we would have had today if they could only get a big enough foothold. Because Microsoft was involved, we almost certainly would have had a version of Windows or similar, and we would have also had a standard from 1983, which really would have helped matters, and it would have meant that the smaller manufacturers such as Dragon and Auric and Jupiter and so on would have been able to compete in a market because they would have had a standard to meet. We'd probably have had a lot more machines out there than we do now, with different features but able to run each other's software. That kind of would make sense, and it is a bit of a shame really that these really didn't take off in the way they should have, in the way that I think a lot of us hoped they would from the initial Spectra video copies that these were originally. Because remember, Spectra video was what these were based on. And Spectra video was originally called Spectra Vision, so you know these go back quite a way, and Sinclair's quote of these were 5-year-old technology, they were slower, though it doesn't really add up, and it's one of the things that, or the very few things that Sir Clive Sinclair actually said, which is not entirely true. But then again, marketing hype and being frightened of what would have been the Japanese invasion as they saw at the time in the early 1980s to mid 1980s. It never happened, but I'm guessing at the time you would have kind of worried about protecting your own company. So let's plug this MSX in, have a quick look at what it can do, and then just show some software running on it to give you an idea of what you may have missed in the 1980s and what these machines could do and how good they really were. So let's take a look. Okay, so we have the CF2700 here powered on, and as you can see it looks like just about any other MSX computer, which it is, and that's the way it should do. In general though, it's quite a decent machine. It's in fairly good condition, and it just needs a little bit of TLC. I don't really want to get rid of all the minor marks on it because it shows it's had a bit of a past. It's not a brand new machine after all, and for that reason I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean, tidy the keys up, and then that's it, leave it as it is. So I'm going to now show you what you may have missed on the MSX, what software it could have run, what kind of games it played, and just give you an overview of really the MSX computers of the time. So let's take a look. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode about the MSX computers. As I said, this is quite a rare machine in the UK, the Panasonic CF2700, and it's possibly not the best example of an MSX machine because it is rather different with those big cursor keys, etc., but it is so close to the MSX standard with its twin cartridge port, which most people in the UK only saw a machine with a single cartridge slot because most people bought the Toshiba. But at the end of the day, all MSXs will run each other's software. So really the MSX is a bit of a miss in terms of what it should have done and where it should have been in the annals of computer history, but it is part of our computer history, and it just shows you some of the giants of the industry can still get it wrong, sort of, because remember, they sold very, very well in countries such as Japan and parts of Europe. So at the end of the day, they probably hit their mark for the countries that they were originally launched in, but for the rest of the world, still a bit of a mysterious machine. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I hope you join us soon. Please subscribe if you want to hear more, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.